Jared leaned back in his chair, staring at the holographic image of Varelia, a beautiful alien world covered in glowing blue forests, silver rivers, and floating cities. He grinned to himself. This was it, his big chance. For years, humans had struggled to establish diplomatic relations with the Varelians, an advanced alien species known for their intelligence, strength, and strict traditions. While other human ambassadors tried to negotiate treaties and trade deals, Jared had a different plan. A simple, brilliant plan. He would marry a Virelian woman. Jared wasn't some smooth-talking diplomat or a high-ranking officer. He was just an explorer, a man who had traveled across the galaxy looking for adventure. But he knew one thing. Alliances were built on relationships, not just politics. And what better way to build trust than by becoming family? It wasn't just about diplomacy, though. Virelian women were famous for their beauty, intelligence, and strength. If he found the right one, he'd have a partner who could help him navigate their culture while also ensuring a comfortable, exciting life on a world far beyond Earth's struggles. Jared checked the data again. Virelians had a unique marriage system, but the details were vague. Some records mentioned family bonds, but that wasn't unusual in alien cultures. He figured he'd deal with the specifics later. First things first, Jared muttered, stretching. Time to find my future wife. Arrival on Varelia. The Virelian capital, Elysia, was unlike anything Jared had ever seen. Floating bridges connected towering crystal spires, and the sky shimmered with hovering ships that moved like silent birds. The streets below were filled with tall, elegant Varelians, humanoid in form, but with graceful, feline-like features and deep violet eyes that glowed softly. Jared walked through the marketplace, drawing a few curious glances. Humans were rare here, but the Varelians weren't hostile, just cautious. He had done his research. The best way to gain their trust was through honor and direct action. And so, when he saw a group of Virelian warriors training in the central plaza, he did something reckless. He stepped forward. I challenge one of you to a duel. The crowd fell silent. Then, amused whispers spread among them. A tall Varelian with dark silver hair and piercing golden eyes stepped forward, her expression unreadable. You wish to challenge a Virelian warrior? She asked. Do you even know what that means? Jared shrugged. I know it's the fastest way to earn respect. The woman studied him for a moment, then smirked. Very well, human. Let's see if you can last more than a minute. Winning a wife, by accident. The duel was brutal. Jared wasn't weak. He had trained for years, and his experience on different planets gave him unusual combat tricks. But fighting a Virelian was like fighting a storm. His opponent, Lyra, moved with lightning speed, her strikes precise and relentless. He barely dodged, barely blocked, but he never backed down. Minutes passed. Sweat dripped from Jared's brow, but he grinned. He was still standing. Then, with one final move, he managed to disarm her. A risky trick that almost cost him an arm, but it worked. The crowd erupted in cheers. Lyra stared at him, then let out a breathless laugh. You are either very skilled or very foolish, human. Jared smirked. Maybe both. A moment later, she did something unexpected. She extended her hand. The crowd gasped. Jared hesitated. What was going on? A nearby Varelian leaned in and whispered, You just performed a courtship challenge. By tradition, you've won her hand in marriage. Jared's stomach dropped. Wait, what? The unexpected wedding. Before Jared could protest, preparations began. He barely had time to process what had happened. One moment, he was proving himself in battle. The next, he was being dressed in ceremonial robes, standing in a grand hall filled with Virelian nobles and warriors. Lyra, now wearing an intricate silver and blue gown, looked at him with a mix of amusement and curiosity. You look troubled, human. Jared cleared his throat. So, this marriage thing, it's permanent, right? Lyra chuckled. Of course. But don't worry. I think you'll make an interesting mate. The ceremony began, and Jared forced himself to focus. This wasn't a disaster. This was the plan all along, right? He was marrying into Virelian society. Mission accomplished. Then the High Matriarch of Virelia, an older Virelian with an air of authority, stepped forward. By our laws, a union with one is a union with all. Jared blinked. Come again. The doors to the hall opened, and 5 more Virelian women walked in, each strikingly different, but undeniably similar to Lyra, his new sisters-in-law. Lyra turned to him with a mischievous smile. Did I forget to mention? Virelian marriages, a family commitment. Jared felt his legs go weak. Oh, no. Jared stood frozen, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. The wedding hall was still filled with cheering Virelians celebrating the union. But Jared wasn't thinking about the grand ceremony, the glowing decorations, or the powerful figures in attendance. No, his focus was on the 5 women who had just walked in. Each one stood tall, graceful, and undeniably intimidating. They were Lyra's sisters, and according to Virelian tradition, they were all his wives now. Jared swallowed. This was not part of the plan. Meeting the sisters, the first to approach was Sarah, the eldest. Her expression was cold, her sharp violet eyes scanning Jared like he was some low-ranking recruit unworthy of her time. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight braid, and she carried herself with the discipline of a warrior. You are the human Lyra chose, Sarah said, her tone flat. Jared hesitated. Yes. Sarah's gaze didn't change. Then prove you are worthy. Without another word, she turned and walked away. Jared blinked. What was that supposed to mean? Before he could figure it out, the next sister stepped forward. Tivri had a smirk on her face, her bright golden eyes filled with mischief. Her dark silver hair was cut short, and she moved with a playful energy. This is going to be fun, Tivri said, circling Jared like a predator studying its prey. A human husband. I wonder how long you'll last before you beg for mercy. Jared let out a nervous chuckle. That's not exactly encouraging. Tivri grinned. Oh, don't worry. I'll keep things interesting. Then came Kiana, the warrior of the family. Her arms were crossed, her muscular frame tense with disapproval. Her hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and Jared could tell she was measuring his combat skills just by looking at him. I don't trust humans, Kiana said bluntly. You'll have to earn my respect. Jared sighed. Great. Another test. Next was Veska, the quiet genius. She didn't even speak at first, simply adjusting the glowing device on her wrist while analyzing Jared through a scanning lens. Her long silver hair partially covered her face, and she seemed more interested in data than in him. After a moment, she mumbled, Physically unimpressive, but adaptive. Jared frowned. Thanks. Finally, there was Aylin, the youngest sister. Unlike the others, she seemed shy, standing slightly behind Veska. But Jared noticed something in her eyes, a sharpness hidden beneath her soft appearance. I hope you're ready, Aylin said in a quiet voice. Because Virelian marriages are not easy. Jared forced a smile. I figured that out about 5 minutes ago. A new life, full of challenges. After the ceremony, Jared was taken to his new home, a massive Virelian estate built into the side of a floating mountain. It had wide halls filled with glowing blue crystals, high-tech training areas, and laboratories filled with alien technology. It was beautiful, but Jared barely had time to admire it. From the moment he arrived, his new wives put him through endless challenges. Sarah assigned him daily combat training to test his limits. It felt less like training and more like torture. Tivri filled his room with strange Virelian creatures just to see how he'd react. He did not react well. Kiana dragged him into warrior trials, forcing him to spar against Virelian soldiers who did not go easy on him. Vesca used him for scientific experiments, scanning his brain to understand human thinking. Aelin, despite her quiet nature, always gave him the hardest mental challenges, testing his ability to adapt to Virelian customs. And through it all, Lyra watched with amusement. "This is how you prove yourself, Jared," she said one evening as he collapsed onto a chair, covered in bruises and exhaustion. "You are not just my husband. You are part of our family now." Jared groaned. "Remind me again why Virelians don't believe in normal marriages." Lyra laughed. "Because we believe in strength, in unity. A husband must be strong enough to stand with his wives, not just one, but all." Jared sighed. This was going to be harder than he thought. An unexpected problem. Just when Jared thought things couldn't get worse, a new problem appeared. One night, as he was trying, and failing, to get some sleep, he was woken up by a loud explosion from Vesca's lab. He rushed over, only to find Sarah and Kiana arguing, while Vesca frantically worked on a flickering energy core. "What's going on?" Jared asked. Sarah turned to him. "An assassination attempt." Jared's blood ran cold. "What? Who?" Kiana's eyes darkened. "Someone doesn't want a human in the family." Jared clenched his fists. He had expected resistance, but an assassination attempt. He looked at his wives, the sisters who had tested him, challenged him, and made his life chaos since the wedding. They weren't just random aliens anymore. They were his family now. And if someone was coming after them, he wasn't going to back down. Jared's heart pounded as he stared at the damaged energy core flickering in Vesca's lab. The air smelled of burnt metal, and the floor was littered with broken shards of alien technology. An assassination attempt. Jared had expected difficulties, culture clashes, trials, impossible challenges, but not this. Kiana stood near the door, her muscular arms crossed, scanning the area like a hunter searching for prey. Sarah, as cold and disciplined as ever, examined the wreckage, while Vesca furiously typed commands into a glowing console, trying to stabilize the power fluctuations. "You're saying someone tried to kill me?" Jared finally asked. Sarah gave him a sharp look. "No, someone tried to kill all of us." Jared swallowed. That somehow felt worse. Tracing the enemy. Vesca's fingers moved quickly over the console. The screens around her displayed security footage, data logs, and complex Virelian scripts Jared couldn't understand. "The energy core was sabotage," Vesca muttered. "Someone tampered with the plasma regulators, causing an unstable reaction." Jared frowned. Could it have been an accident? Vesca shot him a look. "Nothing in my lab is accidental." Sarah stepped forward. "We need to find out who did this. And fast." Tivri suddenly grinned from the doorway, twirling a small dagger between her fingers. "Ooh, intrigue. I love a good mystery. Let's start by interrogating people, maybe with a little pressure." Jared raised an eyebrow. "By pressure, you mean violence, don't you?" Tivri winked. "You catch on fast, husband." Jared sighed. This was going to be a long night, a dangerous clue. While Vesca scanned security logs and Tivri gathered information in her own mischievous way, Kiana and Jared examined the damaged energy core. Kiana frowned as she traced a glowing crack along the device's surface. This kind of sabotage takes skill. Whoever did this wasn't an amateur. Jared rubbed the back of his neck. "So we're dealing with someone on the inside." Kiana nodded. "Likely, or an outsider with help from someone here." Just then, Vesca's screen flashed red. "I have something." Vesca turned toward them, her voice sharp with urgency. Security footage shows an unknown figure entering the lab an hour before the explosion. They wore a cloaking device, but for a brief moment, I caught a reflection. She tapped a button, and an image appeared on the screen. Jared's breath caught in his throat. The reflection was blurry, but he could make out a tall figure with dark armor and glowing orange eyes. Not a Virelian. Kiana's expression darkened. "That's not one of our people." Sarah, standing behind them, exhaled sharply. I was afraid of this. Jared turned to her. You know who it is. Sarah nodded. We have enemies, Jared. There are factions that oppose our alliance with humans. Some believe Varelians should remain isolated, that we are superior. Jared crossed his arms, and they think attacking my new family is going to prove that. Sarah met his gaze, her expression serious. They don't just want to stop the alliance. They want to eliminate anything that threatens their vision of pure Virelian rule. Jared clenched his fists. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about his wives, his family, and he wasn't going to let anyone take them from him. The chase begins. The next day, Jared found himself running for his life. It turned out that trying to track down an assassin meant becoming a target yourself. The moment Jared and Lyra followed Veska's lead to an abandoned sector of the city, they were ambushed. Blaster shots rang out as Jared ducked behind a glowing energy pillar, breathing hard. Lyra was already moving, dodging and weaving through enemy fire with deadly grace. Why is it always me getting shot at? Jared yelled. Lyra smirked, deflecting an incoming shot with her energy blade. Welcome to being married to a Virelian warrior. Jared peeked around the pillar. 3 attackers. Tall, armored, and moving with precision. These weren't common thugs. They were professionals. He took a deep breath. Fine. If they wanted a fight, he'd give them one. Jared grabbed a fallen enemy's weapon, rolled out of cover, and fired. His shot hit one of the attackers square in the chest, sending them crashing into the wall. Lyra finished off the second with a powerful strike. The third tried to flee, but before they could escape, Kiana dropped from above, pinning them to the ground. Jared let out a relieved breath. Good timing. Kiana smirked. You're learning. Interrogation. The captured assassin refused to speak at first, but after some persuasion, Tivri's idea, of course, they finally muttered something that made Jared's blood run cold. You're not the only target. Jared exchanged a look with Lyra. Who else? The assassin's eyes gleamed. The High Matriarch. Jared's stomach dropped. The High Matriarch wasn't just a ruler. She was Lyra's mother. Kiana stood quickly. We need to warn her. Jared didn't hesitate. This wasn't just about him anymore. If someone was planning an attack on the High Matriarch, it could start a full-scale conflict between the Virelians and humans. And there was no way he was going to let that happen. Jared had no time to waste. The assassin's words kept repeating in his head. The High Matriarch is the real target. That wasn't just bad news. It was disastrous. The High Matriarch wasn't just Lyra's mother. She was one of the most powerful leaders of the Virelian race. If anything happened to her, it could spark a war between Virelians and humans. Jared turned to his wives, his pulse racing. We need to get to her. Now. Sarah was already moving. Agreed. We leave immediately. Kiana clenched her fists. We have no idea when the attack will happen. Tivri smirked. Then we just have to be faster than the assassins. Veska tapped her wrist device. I'm accessing the palace security network. I'll monitor for any unusual activity. Jared nodded. No more delays. They had to move. The journey to the palace. The Virelian capital was a sprawling floating city built on massive platforms high above the planet's surface. The palace, where the High Matriarch lived, was located on the highest platform, surrounded by energy shields and guarded by elite warriors. Jared, Lyra, and the sisters boarded a high-speed transport that shot through the sky, heading toward the palace at full speed. Jared glanced at Lyra. She was staring ahead, her hands clenched. She looked worried. He reached out and took her hand. We'll protect her. Lyra's expression softened, but she didn't smile. You don't understand, Jared. My mother is not just my family. She is the foundation of everything. If she falls, our entire people will fall into chaos. Jared squeezed her hand. Then we won't let that happen. Lyra met his gaze, and for the first time since the wedding, He saw something in her eyes. Trust. Palace intruder. As soon as they arrived at the palace, Veska's wrist device started flashing. Intruder alert, she announced. Unauthorized movement inside the palace. Jared's stomach dropped. They were already here. The guards at the entrance barely had time to react before Sarah barked an order. Let us through. The matriarch is in danger. The guards hesitated for only a moment before stepping aside. The group rushed inside. The palace was a massive, elegant structure with glowing walls and shimmering crystal floors, but Jared barely had time to admire it. Veska scanned the air. They're moving fast, heading toward the throne room. Jared exchanged a look with Lyra. No time to think. They had to act. Battle in the throne room. The doors to the throne room slammed open, revealing a chaotic scene. The High Matriarch stood at the center, her tall figure regal and unshaken. Her long silver hair flowed behind her, and her piercing violet eyes scanned the room with calm authority. But she wasn't alone. 6 armored assassins surrounded her. Their weapons gleamed under the glowing lights, aimed directly at the ruler of the Virelian race. The moment the attackers saw Jared and the sisters, they opened fire. Jared dove for cover as energy blasts lit up the room. Kiana was already moving, blocking shots with her energy shield, while Lara dashed forward, striking down an assassin with a precise blade strike. Sarah's movements were deadly and efficient, cutting through enemy ranks like a seasoned warrior. Tidri, always playful even in battle, flipped over an attacker, landing behind them and taking them out with a quick strike. Jared, for his part, managed to dodge a blast and fire back, hitting one of the assassins in the shoulder. One of the assassins charged at the High Matriarch, weapon raised. Jared didn't think. He just moved. He lunged forward, grabbing a fallen guard's energy staff and blocking the assassin's strike just in time. The assassin growled, pushing against Jared with brute force. Jared gritted his teeth. He wasn't as strong as a Virelian warrior, but he didn't have to be. Using the assassin's momentum, Jared twisted, throwing them off balance. Before the assassin could recover, Veska fired a precise energy shot, taking them down. And just like that, the battle was over. The High Matriarch speaks. Silence filled the throne room as the last assassin collapsed to the floor. Jared turned, his breath heavy, and found himself face to face with the High Matriarch. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. You are the human my daughter has chosen. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Jared straightened, suddenly feeling very aware of himself. Yes, High Matriarch. She raised an elegant brow. And you fought to protect me. Jared met her gaze. Of course. There was another long pause. Then, to his surprise, the High Matriarch smiled. Then perhaps my daughter chose well. Jared blinked. Wait, was that approval? Before he could say anything, Sarah stepped forward. We need to question the survivors. Someone planned this attack carefully. The High Matriarch nodded. Agreed. She turned to Jared once more. You have proven yourself today, human. But this is not over. Whoever sent these assassins will not stop here. Jared exhaled. Of course it wasn't over. Liara stepped beside him, her expression softening just slightly. You did well. Jared chuckled. I didn't die. So that's a win. Liara smirked. That's the Virelian way. Jared sighed. Marrying an alien woman had been his plan, but dealing with her entire warrior family, fighting assassins, and protecting royalty, that was something he definitely hadn't planned for. And yet, as he looked at his wives standing beside him, ready for whatever came next, maybe this was exactly where he was supposed to be. Jared sat in the grand meeting chamber of the palace, still catching his breath from the fight in the throne room. The High Matriarch sat on her golden throne, her piercing violet eyes scanning the room with calm authority. Beside her, Lara stood tall, her expression serious. Sarah, Kiana, Tivri, and Veska stood close, all battle-ready. A few feet away, the surviving assassin knelt on the ground, his hands bound with glowing energy cuffs. His dark armor was damaged, and blood dripped from a wound on his forehead. Jared studied him carefully. This man had tried to kill his wife's mother, and he had failed. Interrogation begins. The High Matriarch spoke first, her voice cold and steady. "Who sent you?" The assassin remained silent. Sarah stepped forward, her sharp gaze locked onto him. "You are alive only because we need answers. If you refuse to speak, we will find other ways to make you talk." The assassin chuckled, his voice low and rough. "You think killing me will solve anything?" He lifted his chin, his glowing orange eyes filled with defiance. "You have no idea what's coming." Jared didn't like the sound of that. Tivri leaned in, her playful smirk not hiding the danger in her voice. "We can make this really unpleasant for you, you know." The assassin exhaled sharply, but still said nothing. Veska, who had been silently analyzing data on her wrist device, suddenly narrowed her eyes. "I found something." Everyone turned to her. She held up her device, displaying a symbol glowing on the assassin's armor. It was a silver emblem of a jagged star, surrounded by intricate alien markings. The moment Jared saw it, the assassin tensed. Veska's voice was grim. "He's part of the Kargath Order." "The Kargath Order?" Jared frowned. "Who?" Sarah's expression darkened. "Extremists. They believe Varelians should never mix with other species. They see humans as weak, unworthy." Kiana nodded. "They want to destroy the alliance between Varelians and humans, and they see the High Matriarch as a threat to their vision." Jared exhaled. "Great, so we're dealing with a bunch of alien supremacists." The assassin finally smiled. "Not just a bunch, human. An army." Jared's stomach tightened. The assassin continued. "You think you stopped something big today? This was just the beginning." His smile widened. "The Kargath Order has infiltrated more than you realize. When the real attack comes, you won't be able to stop it." The room fell into a tense silence. Jared could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just a failed assassination attempt. It was the first step of a larger plan. A dangerous lead. The High Matriarch studied the assassin for a long moment before speaking again. "Where is your leader?" The assassin smirked. "You'll find out soon enough." Veska rolled her eyes. "Why do villains always have to be so dramatic?" Jared pinched the bridge of his nose. "Let me guess. You're not going to tell us anything useful, right?" The assassin didn't answer. Liara frowned. There must be another way to track them. Veska tapped her wrist device, scanning the prisoner again. "Wait. There's something here." She walked up to him and placed a small glowing scanner over his armor. The device beeped loudly, and a holographic map flickered to life in the air. Jared squinted at it. It showed a location, deep in the outskirts of the Virelian territory. Veska's eyes widened. This is a secret base." The assassin's face darkened. He hadn't expected them to find this. Kiana smirked. "Looks like we have our next destination." Jared sighed. "Of course we do." Preparing for battle, back at the palace, the group gathered to plan their next move. Sarah studied the map. "If this is a Kargath stronghold, we can't just walk in unprepared." Liara nodded. "We need a plan, and we need to strike before they realize we know about them." Jared leaned forward. "Do we have any idea how many enemies we're dealing with?" Veska shook her head. "No, but if they were bold enough to attack the palace, we should assume they're well organized." Tivri grinned. "Sounds like fun." Jared shot her a look. "This isn't fun, Tivri." She shrugged. "Maybe not for you." Jared sighed. He was seriously outnumbered. A High Matriarch finally spoke, her voice steady. "This mission will be dangerous, but you must go." She turned to Jared, her gaze intense. "You are my daughter's husband. You have proven yourself today, but the true test is yet to come." Jared swallowed. No pressure. The High Matriarch continued. If you succeed, you will not only protect this alliance but earn the respect of all Varelians. Jared took a deep breath. He had never imagined that marrying an alien woman would lead to fighting extremists, protecting royalty, and uncovering secret bases. But here he was, and he wasn't going to back down now. Onward to the Kargath base. A few hours later, Jared found himself inside a stealth transport ship, speeding toward the coordinates Veska had found. He sat next to Lara, who was checking her weapons. Kiana and Sarah sat across from them, focused and ready. Veska was scanning the terrain, while Tivri hummed a tune, clearly enjoying the thrill of the mission. Jared exhaled. So let me get this straight. We're heading into an enemy base, where we'll probably be outnumbered, and we don't even know what we'll find. Liara smirked. That's about right. Jared chuckled. Marrying you was the craziest decision of my life. Liara leaned in, her violet eyes glinting. And? Jared smiled. And I wouldn't change a thing. The ship descended toward the base, and Jared's grip tightened on his weapon. This wasn't over. Not yet. Jared adjusted his gear as the stealth transport ship descended toward the hidden Kargath base. Outside the window, a dark canyon stretched beneath them, shrouded in thick mist. The base itself was built into the rocky cliffs, almost invisible to the untrained eye. Inside the ship, the tension was thick. Sarah stood near the cockpit, scanning the terrain. No signs of aerial defenses. That's strange. Kiana frowned. Too quiet. They should have patrols. Jared glanced at Lara. Trap. She nodded. Most likely. But we can't turn back now. Tivri smirked. That's the spirit. Let's walk straight into danger. Jared sighed. Why am I not surprised you're enjoying this? Tivri winked. Because you know me so well, husband. Veska's wrist device beeped. I'm detecting an entrance, a maintenance hatch on the east side. Sarah nodded. That's our way in. No unnecessary risks. We get in, gather intel, and get out. Jared exhaled. Sounds simple enough. He had learned by now. Nothing was ever that simple. Infiltrating the base. The team landed silently on a ledge near the maintenance hatch. The wind howled through the canyon as they moved quickly, keeping low. Jared followed Lyra as she hacked the door panel. A moment later, the hatch slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. One by one, they slipped inside. The air was thick with the smell of metal and burning fuel. The walls were lined with power cables and flickering screens displaying Kargath symbols. Jared gripped his weapon. So far, no alarms, but the silence was unnerving. Sarah signaled for them to move forward. They advanced carefully, stepping over metal grates and past closed doors. Still no guards. Jared leaned toward Lyra. This is too easy. Before she could respond, a loud alarm suddenly blared through the base. Red warning lights flashed, and mechanical doors slammed shut behind them. They were trapped. Ambush. Heavy metal footsteps echoed down the corridor. From both ends of the hallway, Kargath soldiers appeared, their weapons raised. Dozens of them. Jared cursed under his breath. They had walked right into a trap. The lead Kargath soldier sneered. Foolish outsiders. Did you really think you could sneak in? Sarah's eyes narrowed. We're here for answers. Surrender, and you'll live. The soldier laughed. You don't make demands here. He raised his weapon, and all hell broke loose. Fighting for survival. Jared dived behind cover as energy blasts filled the corridor. Sparks flew as bullets and plasma bolts struck the walls. Kiana activated her energy shield, blocking incoming fire as Tivri leaped into action, flipping over enemies and striking fast. Liara moved like a shadow, her twin blades cutting through soldiers with precise, deadly strikes. Veska fired quick, calculated shots, taking down enemies one by one. Sarah fought fiercely, deflecting attacks and leading the charge forward. We need to get out of this hallway. Jared nodded. We need a way to turn this fight around. That's when he saw it. A power console on the wall. If they could shut down the lights, they could gain the upper hand. Cover me, Jared yelled, sprinting toward the console. Turning the tide. Jared slid behind the power console, dodging shots as he started typing on the control panel. The system was complex, but Veska had taught him a few tricks. Come on, come on. More soldiers were closing in. Sarah and Kiana held the line, but they couldn't keep it up forever. Jared gritted his teeth. He just needed one more second. The lights went out. Instant darkness filled the corridor. For the Kargath soldiers, this was a nightmare. For Lyara and her sisters, this was an advantage. The sisters moved like ghosts in the dark, cutting down enemies before they could react. The soldiers panicked, firing blindly into the shadows. Jared smirked. That should even the odds. Deeper into the base. Minutes later, the last enemy collapsed to the ground. Jared exhaled heavily. That had been close. Sarah wiped her blade. We need to move. More will come. Veska checked her scanner. There's a data center nearby. If they have any plans stored, that's where we'll find them. Jared nodded. Then let's go. They hurried down the dark corridors, moving quickly but carefully. Finally, they reached a large control room filled with glowing screens and servers. Veska rushed forward, plugging her wrist device into the system. I'm in. Downloading files now. Jared and Lyra stood guard as the data transferred. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, until Veska's face went pale. Guys, she whispered. Jared turned. What? Veska slowly looked up. I just found their real target. A shocking truth. Jared's stomach dropped. Veska pulled up a holographic display. Lines of text scrolled across the screen, revealing the Kargath Order's true objective. Sarah read it aloud. Target. Earth. Jared's heart pounded. They weren't just after the High Matriarch. They were planning an attack on humanity itself. Lyara's jaw clenched. We have to stop them. Jared nodded slowly. This wasn't just about his marriage anymore. This was war. Jared stared at the glowing holographic display, his heart pounding. The words on the screen were clear. Target. Earth. This wasn't just about the High Matriarch or the Varelian Empire. The Kargath Order was planning an attack on humanity itself. Jared clenched his fists. He wouldn't let that happen. Lyara and her sisters stood beside him, their faces grim. Sarah exhaled sharply. We need to stop this now. Veska's fingers flew over the controls, her eyes scanning the data. They have a fleet preparing for launch. If they reach open space, Earth won't stand a chance. Kiana nodded. Then we take out the fleet before they leave. Tivri smirked. Finally, a challenge worth my time. Jared sighed. You really need to find a hobby that isn't violence. Tivri winked. This is my hobby. The High Matriarch had sent them on this mission to uncover the Kargath's plans, but now they had to destroy those plans before it was too late. The countdown begins. Veska pulled up a timer on the display. The ships launch in 30 minutes. Jared exhaled. Then we don't have much time. Sarah pointed at the map. The fleet is docked in a hangar at the far end of the base. If we overload the power cores, the entire hangar will be destroyed. Jared nodded. Let's do it. They grabbed their weapons and moved fast. The halls were still dark from Jared's earlier power cut, but the base was waking up. Red warning lights flashed. Sirens blared. Footsteps echoed down the corridors. The Kargath knew they were here. Fighting through the base, the first wave of Kargath soldiers blocked their path. Blaster fire lit up the hallway as Jared and the sisters fought their way forward. Kiana raised her energy shield, blocking incoming shots as Lyra and Sarah cut down enemies with swift, deadly strikes. Tivri moved like a blur, dodging attacks and taking down soldiers with precise blows. Jared fired quickly, covering Veska as she hacked a control panel. Almost there. Veska shouted. A door slid open, revealing a maintenance tunnel leading to the hangar. Jared nodded. Go, go, go. They rushed inside, sealing the door behind them. Reaching the hangar, the maintenance tunnel opened up into a massive hangar. Jared's eyes widened. The Kargath fleet was lined up, their sleek, dark ships humming with energy, preparing for launch. Dozens of soldiers and engineers worked frantically, unaware of the danger approaching. Sarah whispered, "We take out the power cores, and this whole fleet goes up in flames." Veska pointed toward the far wall. "The control room is there. We can overload the power grid from inside." Jared nodded. "Then let's move." They spread out, sticking to the shadows. But before they could reach the control room, an alarm blared across the hangar. They had been spotted. The battle in the hangar. Kargath soldiers rushed toward them, weapons raised. Jared rolled behind cover, firing back as explosions shook the hangar. Sarah took down enemies with precise strikes, while Kiana and Lyra protected Veska as she worked. Tivri leaped onto a Kargath gunner, disarming him and using his own weapon against his allies. Jared fired at a fuel tank, causing a massive explosion that took out several enemies. The Kargath were strong, but they weren't strong enough. Overloading the power core, Veska finally reached the main console. Her fingers flew over the controls, overriding security systems and forcing a core meltdown. "The power grid is overloading," she shouted. "We have 2 minutes before this place blows." Jared turned to the others. Time to leave. They rushed toward the exit, dodging enemy fire as flames erupted around them. The final escape. As they ran, the hangar shook violently. Explosions ripped through the walls, sending debris flying. One of the Kargath warships caught fire, its engines failing as it collapsed onto the others. The chain reaction had begun. Jared grabbed Lyra's hand as they sprinted toward the emergency exit, the others close behind. The moment they cleared the hangar, a massive explosion tore through the base. The Kargath fleet was gone. Jared and the sisters stumbled onto the rocky canyon floor, watching the fire consume the enemy base. They had won. Aftermath. As the smoke cleared, Jared leaned back, catching his breath. Sarah wiped her blade. That was too close. Veska grinned, but effective. Kiana nodded. The Kargath won't be recovering from this anytime soon. Lyra turned to Jared, her violet eyes filled with pride. "You did well, husband." Jared smirked. "Not bad for a human, huh?" Tivri nudged him. "Not bad at all." Jared exhaled. He had come to this planet to marry Lyra. He had expected a simple life, maybe some challenges with her family. But now, he had fought alongside warriors, stopped a war, and saved Earth. Not exactly what he had planned, but he wouldn't trade it for anything. The end.